IBM is the latest U.S. company to retreat from China. The tech giant announcing plans to move their China R&D operations to another overseas facility. For more on how U.S.-China tensions are hitting U.S. companies, we want to bring in Michelle Giuda. She served as Assistant Secretary of State for Global Public Affairs in the Trump administration. She's now the CEO of Purdue University's Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy. And Michelle, thank you for being with us this morning. IBM looked like it was pulling out because it was basically getting replaced anyway. I think it lost something like almost 20% of its business last year. What's really happening on the ground there?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing with IBM and a lot of American tech companies, Becky, is that they're recognizing that operating in China is just not good for business. Set the economy aside. China has made a goal of becoming self-sufficient in emerging technologies. So they're growing local champions in many of the technologies that our American companies have led in for many years and ousting American companies afterward. It's a government program. It's called Delete America, or Delete A for short. And they're going to home grow their own companies and eventually oust the United States and then start to go compete in other markets. So it's just not good for business. It's not good for business to have your IP stolen. It's not good for business to have your employees intimidated. It's not good for business to have your customer and user data handed over to the Chinese Communist Party by law. And so you start to see American companies taking actions that are good for business and, by the way, also good for our national security.
All of those things that you listed off, things like IP theft, intimidation of employees, potential theft of your customers' information, those things were happening before. But I guess American business kind of held their nose and put up with it because they were making money. Now the difference is they're not going to be able to make money.
They're making a lot less money, and there's also a lot of scrutiny both from the Chinese government and from the U.S. government. And you're right, Becky, it's been going on for a long time. It's almost like if you had a friend who really wanted to date this guy, but he was mistreating her for a long time. He was basically using her and then telling everybody that he was going to break up with her anyway. You'd be like, Trudy, this is not a good relationship. And I think American companies have been Trudy for quite a while, and they're starting to wake up and say, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. It's not good for me, and they're making appropriate changes to their business.
So what does that mean if you are pulling out of such a huge potential customer base? What can American companies do to make up for that shortfall?
Well, we're starting to see a lot of movement over to India. We work with a lot of tech companies. We also work with a lot of allied governments at the Krach Institute. And we're starting to see a shift to trusted allied partners. India is one. Apple's first made in India iPhone Pro is coming out very soon. I'm talking with a group of about 30 Latin American embassies later today in Washington, D.C. They're becoming leaders in emerging tech, fintech, and other in their own right. And they want to be a really critical part of the global supply chain, of the global economy. And so you start to see a movement of American companies going to nearshoring, friendshoring, and doing business with trusted partners around the world.
We may want to separate ourselves. China may want to be independent, but we're still pretty intertwined. So how messy does this breakup get? How long does it take?
Well, I think at the end of the day, either China is going to decide how long an American company remains in the country, or the business itself is going to decide that. And so I think the CEOs that are taking proactive measures right now to start to diversify, and it doesn't have to be an overall withdrawal from China or at least ripping the Band-Aid off, but a China plus one strategy, a China plus two strategy, and start to do this in a smart way. But they can see where the puck is headed. U.S.-China policy is not going to change no matter the administration. This is American foreign policy right now. The U.S. Congress is very bipartisan in our approach to making sure that we win in the technology race against China. And so this is a long-term trajectory, and American companies that take action now for this long-term business trajectory are going to benefit and see a lot of return on investment.
I understand everything you're saying from a business perspective. I do wonder, once this separation is complete, what that means for us just from a national security, global security sort of perspective, if you don't have any cooperation between the two largest superpowers on the globe at that point. I mean, it feels like we're in a bit of an icy war at this point. Is it a full-on Cold War at that point?
Look, I think really it's up to the Chinese government. The United States and many of our partners and allies across the world have set rules, standards, and norms for an open economy, a global economy, and things that engender trust when you're doing business and engaging in diplomacy with other partners. Things like respect for the rule of law, respect for intellectual property rights, respect for human rights. The Chinese government has decided in many cases it's not going to abide by those things. And so it's really China deciding that it's not going to be a part of the rules-based world order. But anytime they want to change that, that would be great, and they'd be fully welcome to participate. But I think what you're seeing is allied governments, the U.S. government, and U.S. tech companies just start to deal with reality and make the appropriate case for their business. And by the way, economic security and reducing our reliance on an adversary, on an authoritarian adversary, is not only good for business, it's good for our national security.
Michelle, really great talking to you. Thanks for joining
Becky.
us today.